sing. I got a beat that just won't stop. Make your booty rock and shake that thing. Sound that won't let go of your feet on the dance floor. Percussion possessed, when we make a mess of your mind, body, and soul. It's gonna blind you like the sun. And where we drop it is on the one. Keep you on the kick drum, won't you give me some of that fire that makes me want to jam. You can't beat this, everybody say damn. Funk that never stops, bumping out the box,
Welcome to the Black Pack here on KBLA Talk 1580. I am your host, Adrianne Shropshire, and it is hot outside with no reprieve from this heat wave in sight. It looks like we have at least a couple more weeks of this heat wave to get through. So if you are in need of relief from this heat, or you have neighbors who might be in need of a cooling center, please go online to laparks.org/rec center to find a cooling center location near you. This kind of heat can be dangerous. I think we all know that. And the city has resources to help Angelenos stay safe. So if you need to go to laparks.org/rec center, please do, to find a city park or a library that you can go to stay cool. I feel like I am Sam Jackson playing Mr. Senior Love Daddy on We Love Radio 108 FM and Do the Right Thing. And that is the truth, Ruth. And I think that Mr. Senior Love Daddy would definitely be saying, wake up, wake up, wake up right now when it comes to the last few weeks of lawlessness from Republicans, both at the state and federal levels here in our country. From the illegal racial gerrymandering to expanding the military presence in our nation's capital. We've seen the continued implementation of the Project 2025 blueprint. We shouldn't be confused that these things that we are seeing play out on our streets, in state legislatures and in our own Congress are not, we shouldn't think that these are not a part of that project. And if you need to refresh what is in there, I would suggest that you go and do that so that you can be clear about what we're seeing. I know that, folks have been following the drama of the Texas state legislature. This week we saw some of the Texas Democrats return home and give the governor of Texas and the Republican legislature the quorum that they needed to pass the maps that will remove Texas black and brown representatives from Congress if those maps are allowed to stand. And pass the maps they did. Not before, however, humiliating their Democratic colleagues by forcing them to sign documents that required them to not only stay in the state, so you are not allowed to leave, but forced each of them to agree to have a law enforcement babysitter watching their every move until the vote was cast earlier this week. So yes, you heard that right. Black and brown lawmakers were forced to agree to having an overseer stay with them to ensure that they showed up at the Capitol building in Austin to watch while Republicans stripped away their congressional representation. So one legislator, Representative Nicole Colliers, refused to sign the document. I'm sure many of you listened or watched this story. She refused to sign the document to have an overseer and was told that in that case, she would not be able to leave the Capitol building. She would be locked in the Capitol chambers until the vote. And yes, held against her will, kidnapped, whatever term we want to use. She slept in the chambers because she was not allowed to leave unless she wanted to face arrest for simply not being willing to accept an armed overseer. So yeah, that is where we are in America. Later in the show, we're going to be joined by Risha Thomas, project director for the Texas Black Action Fund, to talk about what's happening on the ground in Texas, how communities are responding, and what's next in the fight there. And of course, as Texas was approving their maps, the state legislature in California was voting to counter this attack by moving to place new maps for California on the November ballot. I think, Andy, we have a clip of Assemblymember Isaac Bryant talking to his colleagues about why this move is necessary.
Change our tone. We have to step up because your silence is deafening. When they took health care and food and veterans assistance, and they made it harder for students to go to college, and they put trillions of dollars in national debt, and you said nothing. That forced us to step into the void. When they held our #1 public university hostage for $1 billion of California tax dollars, and you have said nothing, we had to step into that void. You talk about fighting fire with fire and how we shouldn't do that, while simultaneously a member of your own caucus just yesterday asked the Department of Justice and Pam Biondi to investigate us criminally. I took that personally, that you didn't say anything. We are not just going to sit by and let our democracy crumble. Here in California, we're standing on business.
So as a reminder, this is not about just drawing some lines to make some adjustments here or there, right? This is about using an illegal racial gerrymander in Texas and likely other Republican-led states to strip Black people and others of political power and political representation. I think we have Assemblyman Bryant again.
After those maps in Texas are approved, a Latino voice in Texas is worth 1/3 of the representation as a white voice. A Black voter in Texas is worth 1/5 of the representation of a white voter in Texas. I didn't say 3/5. There was no compromise. I said 1/5. That is the kind of gerrymandering, that is the kind of theft that they are perpetuating. And we can't just sit by and let it happen. We won't just sit by and let it happen.
So this is about restoring racial hierarchy in America. And we should be very clear about that. Later in the show, we'll be joined by Assemblymember Sade El-Warhi to discuss yesterday's vote, next steps here in California, and preparing for the vote in November. And so when we take this gerrymandering fight and we combine it with the occupation of Washington, D.C., Chocolate City, and the threat to occupy other Black-led cities, when we take those two things and we add them on to Trump's ongoing attack on truth and history through his efforts to cleanse the Smithsonian of exhibits and information that he does not like, when he says things like our museums spend too much time talking about how bad slavery was, it's important not to view these things as isolated incidents. These are fights that are in line with every fight that Black folks in America have ever had to wage for our dignity, our inclusion, and our freedom. We'll talk about Trump's attack on history in the 5 o'clock hour with friend of the show and my sometimes co-host, Anoa Changa. But when we come forward, we're going to be joined by Risha Thomas with the Texas Black Action Fund. This is KBLA Talk 1580. You are listening to the Black Pack. Stay with us.
You're part of the Black Pack with Adrianne Shropshire on KBLA Talk 1580.
Lowe's has the Labor Day deals you need to give your home a new look. Buy one, get one free select interior paint via Visa gift card rebate. Then, add the final touch with 2 for $8 on select 2.5 or 3-quart mums. Refresh your home and save big while doing it. Lowe's, we help, you save. Valid through 9/3. Mums offer in-store only. Selection varies by location. While supplies last. More terms and restrictions apply. See Lowe's.com/rebates for details.
Whoa, it's you, the Capital One Bank guy.
That's what they call me.
Mind if I get a selfie?
Yeah, sure thing. Say no fees or minimums on your Capital One checking account.
Wow, that's a keeper. So, where are you heading?
I'm off to spread the good news that Capital One helps people keep more money in their wallet with no overdraft fees.
Oh, you're the best Capital One Bank guy.
Hey, mind if I get a selfie?
Sure.
Say, Capital One, what's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com/bank for details. Capital One N.A. member FDIC.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 is committed to self-care and community well-being. Walk Good LA was formed in June 2020, inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement and the beginning stages of the COVID-19 pandemic. What began as a few minutes of breath work and yoga meditation before protests against police brutality turned into a safe space for the community to heal in hard times. The immensely positive response from the community transformed the momentum into a movement. Today, Walk Good LA is a Black and brown-led community community wellness organization based in Los Angeles. They provide spaces for healing through community yoga classes, guided meditations, hikes, run clubs, and other activations throughout Los Angeles that attract hundreds of members weekly. With the help of Propel and Michael B. Jordan, they now have a yoga and wellness studio in Los Angeles called the Walk Good Yard. To join their mailing list and connect with healing spaces, please visit walkgoodla.org. That's walkgoodla.org. Or find them on Instagram at walkgoodla. This is a community call to action, a community call to healing from KBLA Talk 1580.
Are you ready to be a part of the conversation that will help shape our nation's future? Get ready to join us for the Left Coast Forum, Saturday, October 25th at LA Trade Tech, where progressive voices will come together to tackle the issues that matter most to working families across Los Angeles and beyond. From economic justice to climate action, from healthcare to housing, we're bringing together the brightest minds and most passionate advocates for real solutions and real change. With workshops, 2 major keynote addresses, and a closing reception with great music and good food. It's the Left Coast Forum, where your voice matters and your ideas take action. Saturday, October 25th at LA Trade Tech. Brought to you by KBLA Talk 1580 and the LA Progressive. The future won't wait, and neither should you. Mark your calendar now to be there and be heard. Stay tuned to KBLA Talk 1580 for more details.
You don't talk to me like that. You don't talk to your mommy like that.
Unlike your mama, we can handle your black talk on the Black Pack with Adrianne Shropshire.
You are listening to The Black Pack. I'm your host, Adrianne Shropshire. And I am joined now by Risha Thomas, the project director for Texas Black Action Fund. So, Risha, we have been talking about Texas, as has the entire country, both the outrageousness of your governor, the Republicans in the legislature, but also about, the real, heroism and bravery in so many ways that we saw from many in the Texas legislature on the Democratic side. And also, I know, and we haven't necessarily seen because the mainstream media doesn't like to cover it or talk about it. But I also know folks have been mobilizing on the ground, right? This isn't happening because Texans, Black Texans, brown Texans are just sitting around watching it happen on their television screens. They're actually engaged. So I'm really glad that you're able to join today to talk about some of that.
Thank you so much, Adrianne, for having me. And you're absolutely right. Folks on the ground are engaging, and just like our state representatives, we're not going down without a fight. I was listening to your program earlier, and you talked about the state representative, Nicole Collier, out of Fort Worth, and how, I watched many of her videos, as others probably have who are listening. And when I tell you, I could see it in her eyes and hear it in her voice that she was just sick and tired of being sick and tired. She was a part of the group that left the state and stayed away for 2 weeks. And when they came back, they were told to sign a permission slip. And when we talk about surveillance, and I heard you say overseer, I really want people to understand what that looked like. That meant if they were going for a walk, they had a Department of Public Safety officer with them walking or trailing them. That meant if they were dropping off their kids at school, that the DPS officer was trailing their car or they were at their events. It was as if they had committed a crime when all they were doing was using what they have in their toolbox to stand up and protect Texans. And while they were doing that, what you didn't see was on the other side of those doors that Nicole was locked in, there were people shouting, "Let her out." There were people going the next day in support of her. There were actually other state legislators. There were other state representatives, many Black women, as we know, Black women lead, going in and saying, "You're right, Nicole. I'm tearing up my permission slip and I'm going to stay the night with you that second night." So, when we talk about our state representatives, they also had support not only in Austin, but also they had people coming to Chicago supporting them. I was honored to be a part of a delegation that went to provide support and let them know that folks have not forgotten about them back home because it can feel hard during that time. But we've also mobilized in Houston, in Fort Worth, and in Austin. And, you know, people talk about the first phase that has already passed. The state representatives have passed, they have passed those maps, and now it's in the state Senate. But there are people still advocating, still providing stories to make sure that our voices are not erased from the history books. But let's be very clear, this is not just an attack on who represents us, but it's an attack on our government, an attack on democracy.
And I think that's, I mean, and there's still a role for the Democratic state legislators to play, particularly in the Senate, right? I know that I think Senator Carol Alvarado has filed her intent to filibuster the maps, right? There's still a way for folks to try and fight, right? Even inside of the Capitol at this point. Is that right?
That's absolutely right. So I was just watching about an hour before talking to you, one of the senators from Austin asking questions to the author of the bill. I saw senators from Houston doing the same thing, and I have heard word that State Senator Carol Alvarado, who's been a fighter in Houston and in the east end of Houston, preparing to do a filibuster. And, you know, I want to be clear, the goal is we know that they have the supermajority in the House and in the Senate. The idea is, you know, they will pass these maps. But what we want is all of the information necessary to fight in the courts and to make sure that the history books reflect that people did not just, you know, take this laying down and just said, oh, well, right? We will continue to fight, and that's the spirit of Texas. Yeah.
And let's talk about that a little bit, because I think that, you talked about some of it. I mean, I remember seeing, the night when they locked Representative Colliers in the chambers. There were folks outside, and I don't know that everybody saw this, right? There were folks outside getting arrested, right? Folks outside in the rotunda, I think, getting arrested. It's so important. The thing that you just said is that whichever way this goes, history needs to record that people stood up and that people fought. So talk a little bit about what groups are doing. What are folks doing organizing in Houston and in other places? I think the other thing for people to know who aren't familiar with Texas is that the state capitol is in Austin. And so people had to mobilize that night to Austin, right? From other parts of the state, and Texas is big, and so it'd be like, if we're here in California, asking folks from Los Angeles to mobilize on a moment's notice to Sacramento, right? People had to get themselves together to go get to the state capitol. Talk about what folks are doing in other parts of the state, and because I think there's also a desire, right, to help amplify around the country what groups and individuals or activists are doing.
Absolutely, and I'll give a couple of names of organizations that I know, but I can tell you, yes, it is a drive to get to Austin, Texas. From Houston, it can be about a 2.5 hour to 3 hour drive. From Dallas, you're talking about a 3 to a 3.5 hour drive. From the Valley or other places, it can be up to 4 hours to drive one way to Austin, Texas. So I'll talk a little bit about what we did leading up to it. So groups like mine and Texas for All and the Texas Organizing Project and Workers Defense and the Texas Civil Rights Project galvanized folks in Houston, Dallas, and in Austin, where they were holding hearings. So if you recall, they held some very rushed hearings where we got less than a week's notice that they would be listening to people and their concerns, but we had no maps.
Right.
There were just rumors and ideas of what this map might look like. So people were at rallies, and after those rallies, people signed up to speak out about the bill, about the redistricting, but it was limited to 4 hours. And I can tell you, I was at the Houston one, and I walked from where we had the rally to the location where they were doing the hearing. And by the time I got up the stairs at the University of Houston, the doors were already closed because they were at capacity. So there were already 500 plus people in. So what people did was there were slips of paper. So people made sure that even if they could not testify, that they wrote their names and talked about how they were in opposition to the redistricting maps. And we did that in Houston. They did rallies in Dallas as well as in Austin. And then in addition to that, there was a large rally held, I think it was nationwide, in support of the Texas Democrats really taking a stand and leaving the state and saying, you know, this isn't a Texas problem. This isn't everybody's problem. Right. If it succeeds here, it can happen anywhere else. I think Texas, our Democrats really made sure to say, you know, we're the first, not the only. So we held rallies. We supported them financially as well, because let's be honest, after their first quorum in 2021 around voting rights, the House passed more stronger guidelines around quorum. So basically for us, the one tool that the minority party has is you can break quorum. You can leave the state. This wasn't the first time. They've done it before. Right. They did it in 2003, right, around redistricting, funny enough. But those times, they could leave and not get a fine. Currently, and one of my friends who's a state rep, State Representative Lauren Ashley Simmons, posted a letter that talks about the fine that she incurred. So for each day, they were fined $500. Wow. They stayed out for 2 weeks. Right. That's close to
and we're talking about personal fines. We're talking about individual people being fined $500 a day.
$500 a day. And let me just preface it by saying state reps in the state of Texas make $7,200 a year. All right. $7,200 a year. So your fine is now more than you make in a year as a state representative. Right. So we supported them there because we knew that the Republicans were using everything they could to discourage them. And then, of course, leading up to the votes, we provided stories for many of the state representatives. If you look at the videos, they stand up and they talk about, you know, historical facts. They talk about how will people get their resources? What does this map really look like? We provide them with stories. And then moving forward, you know, we're thinking that we're going to have to take legal action. And legal action takes resources and consistent talking to folks about what it means. Because, you know, when I think about our representation and looking at the maps, you know, one person said, I live in Austin, and now I will have a congressional member who also lives in Victoria, Texas. Right. And I will tell you,
define that geography for us so that we understand what that means.
That's about a 2-hour drive, right? Right. I think about my district I live in the congressional 18th district that still has not had a special election for our representative that passed away. But it's now combined with the south part of Houston, where traditionally there were 2 Black congressional members, and now it will be 1. And to go from one end of Houston to the south side of Houston, from the north to the south side of Houston, is at least a 45-minute drive. Right. And that's with no traffic. So we're talking about people who are looking for resources around Veterans Affairs, looking for support on Medicaid or Medicare. Where do you go? And how far is your elected official that you can lean on?
Right. We talked about this with Representative Charlene Ward Johnson just a couple weeks ago about that this is there are real impacts on people when you start talking about changing the lines for a district. Not just that you are now grouping together folks who may not have anything at all in common, right, in terms of what the needs of a community might be. But you also start to talk about people, as you just said, veterans, folks who need other kinds of services, folks who need people representing them to understand what the needs are in their specific communities. And that just gets lost. And that is kind of the point about allowing people to choose their representatives and not the other way around.
Yep. And we'll continue to mobilize. You know, we're going to continue to get out the vote. Just because these districts seem to be more favorable to Republicans, we don't believe that it is the end-all, be-all. And we will continue to talk to people about the importance of voting because, quite honestly, Texas is a it's not a Republican state. It's a non-voting state. We have more people who are registered to vote and not going out and voting than we do who are registered as or supportive of Republicans. So we do believe that there is a path to continue to do the work that we're doing. We're not slowing down. I think, our actions and mobilization will continue, but we'll continue to talk to people about the importance of voting, because this right here is a clear example of what happens when when folks stay home and they don't see the connection of voting and representation.
Well, and so important in a state like Texas, and I always try and say this when I have folks on from Texas talking about any subject actually, is that I think that it is not widely understood, right, that Texas has the largest concentration of Black folks of any state in the nation, that Texas has the highest concentration of Black voters of any state in the nation. So when we're talking about disenfranchising folks through an illegal racial gerrymander, we are fundamentally talking about disenfranchising Black folks. We're talking about diminishing the political power of Black folks in this country, but in the state of Texas specifically. And these things, there are, if we can't get folks to understand that and come out and vote, right? Or that is a thing that we have to help people to understand so that we can get them out to vote and help them understand their interests in participating in democracy. But this is such a great conversation. And again, I want to thank you for being here. We're going to continue this conversation with Risha Thomas. On the other side, I want to talk a little bit about this idea of disenfranchisement and what it means when we start redistricting and taking away representations. This is KBLA Talk 1580. Stay with us.
More of the Black Pack with Adrianne Shropshire on KBLA Talk 1580 when we come forward.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. New corruption charges against former top advisor in New York City, Ingrid Lewis Martin, who is Black, and other supporters of Black New York City Mayor Eric Adams are prompting pushback from City Hall.
We're really talking about ancient history, conduct that doesn't implicate the mayor in any way.
First Deputy Mayor Randy Mastro says Adams is not involved, while a spokesperson called Martin a longtime friend and devoted public servant. The man accused of arranging Memphis rapper Young Dolph's killing has been found not guilty. Hernandez-Gobon faced murder and conspiracy charges, with prosecutors saying he ordered the hit. And Republicans and Democrats are condemning a racist sign targeting Virginia's Black Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earl Sears at a school board meeting. Earl Sears called it disgusting, while Democratic candidate Abigail Spanberger referred to it as racist and abhorrent. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Slowing on the 5, starting in Griffith Park, southbound delays away from the 134 all the way to the 605 in Santa Clarita. A car flipped over on the 5 northbound coming up on Calgrove. The right lane has been blocked, and delays overall backing up out of Sun Valley away from Sunland Boulevard. Now, it's also a tough drive as you make your way along the 60, or make that the 215 in Grand Terrace. This is southbound at Iowa Avenue. The left lane has been blocked with a wreck. They're trying to clear it. Delays from the 10.
Attention 405 drivers. From 10 p.m. Friday, August 22nd to 5 a.m. Monday, August 25th, the 405 will be down to 3 lanes in both directions through Sepulveda Pass. Expect delays. Plan ahead, take alternate routes, or use public transit. Follow at Caltrans District 7 for updates.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The first college football game of the 2025 season is an HBCU matchup. Tomorrow night in Atlanta, North Carolina Central and Southern University will meet up in the SWAC MEAC Challenge. Southern is a longtime member of the Southwestern Athletic Conference. North Carolina Central is in the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference. ABC will have live coverage at 4:30 p.m. Pacific Time. This is the final weekend for NFL preseason games. It's a last chance opportunity for players battling for a roster spot. All teams will be making final cuts on Tuesday to reach the 53-man roster limit. With 3 weeks left in the regular season, the WNBA has set a new attendance record with 2.5 million fans going to games. The previous mark was set in 2002 when the WNBA had 16 teams. The league has 13 teams today. The LA Sparks rank 4th in the WNBA with an average attendance of 12,234. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Break out the champagne. Everybody get a glass.
Tavis Smiley is now ranked number 16 nationally and the highest rated talk show hosted by an African American on the 2025 Talkers Heavy 100 list of the most important talk radio hosts in the nation. Last year, Tavis ranked number 33 and the year before, number 45. The Tavis Smiley Show has rapidly expanded its national syndication to now include nearly 50 radio stations across the country and counting. Congratulations, Tavis.
Yeah. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Imagine a Los Angeles where everyone can thrive, where communities have access to the resources they need to succeed. That's the vision of Detours Mentoring Group, Inc. They're dedicated to improving life in LA County by providing educational support, employment assistance, and spaces for community engagement. By 2050, they want LA to be the best place to connect, create, learn, live, and play. They're working toward an education system that's well-resourced and culturally responsive, becoming a hub for artists and innovators, and making sure everyone has access to healthy food, quality healthcare, and safe housing. It's about building a future where we all have the chance to succeed. We invite you to learn more about their mission and get involved with Detours Mentoring Group, Inc. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Hey there, Los Angeles. This is James Lucky Jr., publisher and editor of Los Angeles News Observer. Are you hungry for news that matters to you in the African American communities of Los Angeles? Well, buckle up, because we got the scoop you've been craving. Stay in the know and never miss a beat with our free weekly publications conveniently available near you. Or hop on the digital wave and become an exclusive subscriber at OGNSC.com. Don't forget to join the party on Instagram and Twitter at OGNSCINC for behind-the-scenes access and sizzling updates. No more FOMO. Let's stay informed, connected, and empowered together.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. Let's get back to more of the Black Pack with Adrianne Shropshire right now on KBLA Talk 1580.
You are listening to the Black Pack. I am your host, Adrianne Shropshire, and we are joined by Risha Thomas, the project director for the Texas Black Action Fund. And we are talking about what's going on in Texas, not just the Republican attempt to strip power away from Black and brown folks in the state, but also about the ways in which organizations are mobilizing their communities, in which activists are getting involved. And, I think, Risha, we listened to, the Texas Republicans saying that, sometimes they say they're just following the law. Sometimes they're openly admitting, as they have in places like North Carolina before, right, that they're trying to tip the scales and very clearly trying to tip the scales around race. And in a statement this week, you sort of called this out, right? You talked about this being a function of the system of white supremacy. Talk a little bit more about that in your statement, kind of addressing this issue of, we call it an illegal racial gerrymander for a reason.
Absolutely. I just watched the author of the bill on the Senate floor say that he's looking to help support more Republican districts, right? We look at just we have 4 Black congressional members out of Texas. With these redistricting, it will be reduced to 2. And when we think about where the growth of Texas came from, and even the reason why in 2020 we were able to add 2 seats, it was because of people of color. It was not because they were growing by white voters. It was because it was Black and brown voters. There were people moving into the state, sometimes from New York, sometimes from California. And that is the reason why we had to redistrict in 2020 in the first place. But it is very clear, at least to me, what I see is that this is a power grab. This is a view that this is almost like a last-ditch effort. I heard this very country term from someone from North Carolina that said, a dying horse kicks the hardest. And it is because they see that no one is supporting their policies.
Right.
They see that nobody is supporting the things that were in Project 2025 now that it's being fully implemented. And they're saying, well, what can I do? And the only thing that they can do is change the rules. It's as if we're playing a basketball game and, you know, folks are leading. My team is leading. And the other team gets upset and says, you know what? I don't like how we're playing this game anymore. Let's change the rules. It's like you can't change the rules in the middle of a basketball game. And they're changing it because this is their last-ditch effort to seek and hold control for as long as possible. I think when Donald Trump first called the governor of Texas, they talked about that with the changes of these maps mid-decade, that would mean that no Democrat could win statewide in possibly this generation. This is definitely absolutely a power grab because they see the trajectory changing and they see something in this state that says, while we have the power, let's change the rules so we can always have the power.
Yeah. And I think it's an important point that you raise about the power grab, right? About the efforts to create a permanent majority, right? Making it impossible for Democrats to be able to win. And I also want to, we're talking about this within the context of a two-party system, right? And so, yes, we talk about Democrats winning, or losing, right? But we also have to, make sure that we're very clear about who Democrats represent, right? And who they represent, whose interests they represent, and that, you said, which I feel like is really important, in that that we also not lose this point, that there will be 4 Black members of Congress that will be written out of their seats, right? That means reducing the numbers of CBC members in the United States Congress, right? And so again, this really is about like reducing representation, reducing political power, both for Black folks and for Latinos, at the same time that they're doing other things, right? To also make sure that it's difficult, right, for people to be able to cast their ballot, right, to be able to use their right to vote. I think it's in Tarrant County, right, near Fort Worth is near where Fort Worth is. I think they just cut like 100 polling locations, right? And so these things, when we look at not just the sort of erasing or the eliminating of political representation, but also the effort to continually make it increasingly hard for people to even be able to cast a ballot for the person that they want to represent them.
Absolutely. And Adrianne, I think you brought up a good point about Tarrant County, which is the county that's the county that holds Fort Worth, Texas, which is, I believe it's about the 7th largest city in Texas. And it's still ran by it's pretty conservative in that county, but the city is actually leaning more Democratic and progressive. But if I could just take some time and just remind your listeners that in 2021, while we were in the thick of COVID, the Texas state legislators broke quorum, and it was because of voting rights. So after historic turnout of voters in 2020, the governor decided that he wanted to make changes to the voting rights laws in Texas, which have some of the most stringent guidelines and rules, right? And one of the things that they wanted to take away was early voting on a Sunday, where most Black Texans would go after church to go and vote, 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. That was a tradition that my mom and I had, right? We would go to church, and then we may stop by a polling location and vote together, and then go on with our evening. But they wanted to take away that. They wanted to take away drive-through voting locations. And I do believe that because they weren't successful in really stripping down the voting rights of Texans in 2021, it came back with a vengeance in current day. So this is all connected. It's not just about the representation, and you're right, this is about, you know, reducing the number of congressional Black caucus members. This is about frustrating people to the point that they don't want to engage with their congressional members. This is about making it difficult for people to get the resources that they need. And it's also about setting the tone for the future generations. You know, we're our future Jasmine Crockett. We're our future Mark Vesey's. We're our future Barbara Jordans and Sheila Jackson Lee. That's why, you know, my organization is also talking to people about not just engaging in voting, but becoming a candidate for some of these other local elections, because it's about, if you can't see what you could possibly be, then that also limits what people dream that they can do. And it limits who runs for office, right?
Yeah.
And what we want is people to run for office who are truly connected to the community. But if your district takes you 4 hours round trip to get through, it's a little hard to think about running for that. But this is much larger than what we're talking about today. This is about future generations and really what's to come.
And I think the other thing to remember, too, is that what we started out talking about is that we should not lose sight that all of this is happening, has been happening, and that Texans will fight back, right? All Texans, including Texans of color. I remember, you know, after all of the efforts to kind of, you know, restrict and shut down folks, you know, from voting, I can remember, you know, watching a man, and I feel like I can't remember what city he was in, but there was a man, maybe he was in Houston, right? Maybe he was in Harris County, who waited in line for 7 hours. He just wasn't going to go. Right, he was not going to let them take his right to vote away, and I think that we're seeing that in the Democratic legislators, and also just in the people of Texas. So I want to talk a little bit more about that when we come forward about what is next, and also again the question I asked earlier about what can folks do to help amplify what's happening. We'll continue this conversation with Risha Thomas from the Texas Black Action Fund when we come forward. This is KBLA Talk 1580.
You're part of the Black Pack with Adrianne Shropshire on KBLA Talk 1580.
Nearly 7 million Americans aged 65 and older are living with Alzheimer's disease, or AD. But did you know that Black adults aged 65 and older are twice as likely as white adults to develop AD? You may be able to reduce your risk by managing conditions like diabetes and high blood pressure, being physically active, eating healthy, and exercising your mind. To learn more about AD, the importance of early diagnosis and intervention, and a potential treatment option, visit treatalzearly.com. That's treatalzearly.com. This message is brought to you by AZI.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. The Autopsy Initiative provides a second autopsy free of charge for victims' families who have lost their loved ones due to a police-related death. The services offered through the initiative include the completion of a second autopsy, disclosure of preliminary findings, and a final autopsy report. A police-related death is when an individual is harmed by police officers using deadly force, which results in an individual's death. Police-related death includes in-custody deaths, including those that arise during contact with law enforcement officers during arrest, pursuit, booking, transport, or incarceration. The Autopsy Initiative has a team of board-certified pathologists on call. An autopsy request may be completed by anyone with a close relationship with the victim, which may include the victim's spouse, partner, relative, close friend, or lawyer. To request a free second autopsy for a victim of police violence, please visit knowyourrightscamp.com. That's knowyourrightscamp.com. Then click on autopsy, then click on request. At KBLA, we believe in justice for victims of police violence. We say their names, and we don't black down. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Yeah.
We're
California Crusader newspaper would like to thank all of our subscribers for their support throughout the years, proudly serving the South Los Angeles and South Bay areas for more than 40 years. The California Crusader is a multicultural, black-owned, adjudicated newspaper that focuses on providing newsworthy information to the people in our community. We're constantly looking for ways to assist businesses in our community to connect with our subscribers. We provide low-cost, effective ways to promote your business with our reasonable and affordable advertising rates. You can participate by suggesting, sharing, and submitting your stories on the California Crusader newspaper Community Share Facebook group page, or visit our website at cal-cruise-news.com. That's calcruisenews.com. Then click on the Submit Now button located on the top right corner of the homepage, or text CCN to 42828. Again, text CCN to 42828. The California Crusader newspaper, working together to build a better community for our future. Subscribe today.
You don't talk to me like that. Don't talk to your mommy like that.
Unlike your mama, we can handle your black talk on the Black Pack with Adrianne Shropshire.
We are wrapping our conversation with Risha Thomas, the project director for the Texas Black Action Fund. So Risha, Texas, it is appropriate, perhaps, right, that immediately, right after the passage of this new set of maps in Texas, or these potential new set of maps, I guess we should say, because I do think that it's important to make clear that this is not over. This is not a done deal yet, and that there's still many things that folks that are doing to try and stop the maps. But it's appropriate that California, in so many ways, it's appropriate that California came behind that and said, we're not going to allow this to happen, right? That we will do our part, right, to sort of push back. And not just because we're talking about, two of the most populous states, right, in the country, but also because we're talking about two states with long histories of activism among communities throughout the states. But we're also talking about long history of Black-brown solidarity work. And what that means, I think, in this moment in America's history and in the history of both of the states feels really important. We also know that there's lots of tensions, right, between our communities as well. But I'm wondering your thoughts on what this moment could mean for cross-community solidarity building in the face of these attacks on our communities.
I have actually thought about this a while. For me, California has deeper roots than taking the baton and moving forward. I have family who moved from Houston to California and have set up roots there. Some of my best friends are living in LA. So for me, this really and truly hits home. I think it was one of the state representatives, I believe it was Rep. Brian, who talked about how his brother lives in Dallas, and he talked about the differences in upbringing between the states. But I think for me, this shows that when one state does not see they do not see the vision and the mission of representing the state, i.e. Texas, not our Governor Greg Abbott, not really putting Texans in the front and the forefront of his mind and bowing to what Donald Trump wants, that there are states that take that up, right? And there is a direct connection. I think, when I think about the fact that y'all will have on your ballot, I believe in November, the opportunity to answer that call that Trump gave to Texas and to Florida and to Indiana and to others, I think it's really a wonderful opportunity. I think for folks who live in California and LA, I would say this isn't just an idea of, now we got to figure out a way to protect Texans. This is like your opportunity to fight for democracy, right? I think, to really be bold and say, listen, what you're doing across the country is not going to fly, and we have the opportunity to make changes. While, I understand the importance of having nonpartisan redistricting, but when you are living in a place where our democracy is literally on the line, you have to step up and be bold and do other things. So to me, it is the opportunity to really cast a ballot for democracy. And that's what Californians have an opportunity to do. And I think it's actually pretty magical that it's between Texas in California, seeing as though how deeply our roots are connected, how because of how our communities are formed and shaped, that there has been a long history of Black-Brown coalitions, both in Texas and in California.
Yeah. And I think that, we certainly will see, presumably, right, we will also see other Republican-held states or Republican-led states also try and jump into the fray. Florida has said that they will, talking about Ohio and Missouri and Indiana, but also we've, also heard New York say, we'll figure out a way. We've heard Illinois say they'll try and figure out a way. But I think that this is part of, I think, the point that I was making earlier about, this is a real, why in a democracy would folks fight so hard to stop other people from participating and having the representation of their choice, right? Because that is what this feels like in so many, different ways. And I said early in the show, like this is about a return to racial hierarchy, because we're not just talking about cutting out any old random seats here. Right. No. We're talking specifically about eliminating the seats of representatives of color, right down to, again, in, taking seats away in Missouri, potentially taking, the one seat away in South Carolina. Right. This feels very much to your point about this isn't just about protecting, democracy in Texas. All of this is about trying to hold the line on what wasn't even the perfect democracy, right? Like it isn't like we had reached democracy utopia, right? But we're just trying to hold the line on what we had so that we have something to build on. And I wonder if that is how folks, the organizations and folks that are beginning to mobilize in Texas to stop this effort, if that is how folks see it as well, that this is both about protecting communities in Texas, but also about something much larger than just that.
Absolutely. And I want to be very clear. Not every Democrat in the state of Texas had their districts redrawn.
Right.
We saw in some of the most progressive areas, and quite honestly, we saw the majority of the congressional members who were either Latino or Black saw a redraw of their map. So it is blatantly clear that it is not for everybody. Right. It is for certain people, and it's been done surgically. And absolutely, I think in the state of Texas, as we are continuing to talk to different organizations and mobilize, we do see this as not just something that's happening in Texas, but reaching out and informing our counterparts in other parts of the country, because it's going to happen in Florida. The conversations are happening in Indiana, as you mentioned. So we're starting to not just organize within ourselves, but reach across the different states and say, listen, this is the playbook that they did in Texas. And I think that's what the Texas Dems tried to do. They said, this is the playbook. This is what they're doing. Right? And they said, we're going to blow it up so that our folks in Florida and other states see what they're trying to do, and hopefully we can be a blueprint for how to fight back and how to be prepared for, when it's coming to those other states. But we are talking to folks, our counterparts in Florida and in Missouri and in other places, because we know that, listen, we can't just focus on our state. This is about the nation, and it's about coordination with others, because the resources are thin, but if we come together, then we can really, at least pause. I think the tactic in Texas has been delay.
Right.
If it's going to pass, it's not going to pass without some negative headlines. It's not going to pass without it being on CNN. It's not going to pass without it being on MSNBC or even Fox News, right? We're going to make it everyone's issue.
Yeah.
And that's what we'll continue to do. I think, the maps have not passed yet, but when and if they do, we'll be prepared to file legal suits and legal actions that are led by people who are directly impacted.
Yeah. And so talk to us a little bit about the Texas Black Action Fund, the work that you are doing. Let us know how folks can follow the work and also support the work that you all are doing in the state.
Absolutely. So the Texas Black Action Fund was really founded with two goals in mind: providing resources and capacity building for Black-led Texas-based organizations. And through that, we've done things like we've granted close to $100,000 to the organizations doing the work in the state of Texas. We've held convenings across this wonderful state to connect leaders who are doing the work in, say, Tarrant County with people who are doing the work in Austin. Because what we found is that people are so in the thick of their work that oftentimes they don't have that space to talk to others about what's happening. And, you know, what we're doing actually this year and what we're gearing up to do moving forward is to join in with other organizations to start doing candidate trainings. Because oftentimes what we see is that there is a void in people taking leadership positions. Now, not everyone will be a congressional member, but we need more state reps. We need more state senators. We need more people on the school board, on city council, and even serving on boards that are not elected but appointed. So our goal is to really start building a bench of Black Texans who are willing, able, and have the tools necessary to take up that arm of representing their communities and their neighborhoods. And if people are interested in more about us, you can find us at the TexasBlackActionFund.org online. You can find us on Instagram, TX Black Action Fund, and you can find us as well, Texas Black Action Fund on Facebook.
Okay, Risha Thomas, I want to thank you so much for talking to us, for letting us know what's happening on the ground, for letting us know about your work at the Texas Black Action Fund and how people can reach out and support, or at least check in and know what you all are doing. This fight is obviously far from over, so I expect to talk to you again about what is going on and bring us up to speed so that we can track what's happening with you all. But appreciate you joining us here. When we come forward, we're going to shift to California and be joined by Assemblymember Sade El-Hawari to talk about what's going on here. Stay with us. This is KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. Black Baltimore Mayor Brandon Scott is urging President Trump to boost federal support for public safety after Black Governor Wes Moore invited Trump to visit. Scott pointed to the city's historic crime drop and said Baltimore won't host a political photo op unless President Trump restores federal grants and backs gun control instead of pushing, quote, racist narratives about Black-led cities, end quote. Beyonce Sacred is launching a new protection collection for damaged hair featuring a shampoo, scalp spray, oil, detangling spray, and balm. The line uses natural ingredients like aloe, honey, and African oils to promote healthy hair and scalp. And Virginia's Black Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earl-Sears, a Republican candidate for governor, spoke at an Arlington school board meeting Thursday, blasting its bathroom policy as dangerous and insane. She vowed not to let political correctness